And now we wrap things up with the general strategies you're going to want to employ as a Warpriest. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, bringing you the final episode of the Pathfinder Warpriest build guide, and today talking about the general strategies you're going to want to employ with this class, and specifically this build. But before we begin breaking all of that down, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there and hit the subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you're already part of such an illustrious roster, then go on down there and hit that like button and share the video far and wide to help us grow further, farther, and larger. But now, let's go ahead and dig into this a little bit here. So, for your general strategies, with this class, it's interesting. You're a melee-focused class, or at least you're a very offensively focused class, more so than some of the other options that you might have available to you. And in a very direct fashion. You don't have the spell casting to be a full spellcaster. So with this build specifically, we've made a very melee focused character with the abilities, feats, spell casting, and equipment all built around meeting that goal. In particular, the Deathless Initiate feat chain is meant to keep you alive and active when you would otherwise die or be limited in your ability to participate in combat. And if you use this combined with fervor to keep alive until you can take full attack, move and attack actions, then you can swift cast a healing spell to keep yourself alive, moving, ticking, and right there in the fight. Particularly once you gain access to an advanced healing magic like the heal spell. Especially that one because where healing hit point damage normally isn't the most efficient use of your spells in a fight, heal makes a big difference, and not only does it boost you a massive amount of hit points to keep going in a fight, likely enough to heal you, if not to full health, almost full health, it'll also remove a whole suite of status ailments that really impair your ability to participate in a fight. So definitely a handy one to have in combination with this fervor ability. And as I mentioned before, you don't have the best attack progression, but you can compensate for that with buffing spells and blessings such as Divine Favor. This will offset the attack penalty of feats like Power Attack and allow you to increase your damage output rather. And along those lines, feats like Vital Strike, when you're only able to make an attack against a single target, will also up your damage potential. And then combining it with Cleave, especially when you have only one attack or if you're forced to move and only able to make one attack after, Cleave will let you at least hit 2 targets. And then you combine Vicious Cleave with Vital Strike, well, now you can hit 2 targets and get that extra damage Vital Strike offers. So this helps increase your melee damage despite the normally lower number of attacks that you might get. And additionally, you're going to want to use your blessings to buff your allies and save spells for feats like Divine Interference, which will allow you to force enemies to reroll attacks, specifically those that are critical hits. Rerolling those will be massively important. The fact that you may not successfully negate the hit entirely, as long as you reduce it from being a critical hit to a regular hit, that's a net benefit. And also, remember, use your lower level spells for this. One, you have more lower level spells than you do your higher level spells, and your higher level spells are where you're gonna get much more tactical combat benefit out of. These are your movement spells, counterspelling, your combat buffs as well. And by spending your lower level spell slots, you can force rerolls more regularly. The fact that you're only getting to apply, say, a -1 penalty to your opponent's reroll, that's just a little bit of icing on the cake. The important thing is making them reroll. That will be massively beneficial for you and your team. And also, remember that items such as Amulet of Quaking Strikes will allow you a devastating ranged options against clusters of enemies. it's enemies that are on the ground, but it's something that you can do at least 2 times per day. And remember, this lets you reach out anywhere within 100 feet. You pick that point out, and around that point is a 20-foot radius of opponents that you can affect. So you can aim towards a good cluster of opponents. You strike the ground with a melee attack, and you use that roll to determine how many opponents in that cluster you hit. If you beat all of their armor class, then you can hit all of them. So you count each one individually. If you have 5 opponents all around 18 to 20 armor class and you roll a 21, you hit all of them. And this applies your damage effects from 1.5 times your strength, your regular weapon damage dice, power attack, and also feats like Vital Strike. All of those will count in and deal a great amount of damage for you on each opponent. You don't get to add in bonuses like enhancement bonuses from your weapon, so if you have a +5 magic weapon, that does not apply. It applies towards the attack roll, just not the damage roll, so bear that in mind. And also, speaking of magic equipment, prioritize consistently useful enchantments that come up in your campaign for your gear. Even if, as the example I used last time around, Divine Armor can give you the Fortification enchantment temporarily, if you find yourself facing enemies with high critical hit rates or frequently using sneak attacks against you, then get that enchantment put onto your armor or your shield and save your ability uses of Divine Armor for other situational benefits. Some people might say that's a much more expensive enchantment going for either the moderate or the heavy, which I think is statistically the most beneficial. Remember, your money only keeps you alive if you invest it well in good equipment. And also, the point of Divine Armor and Sacred Weapon, the bonuses that those can provide, is it frees up your budget and your money for these other specific enchantments that do come up and are useful in your campaign. But play it on a case-by-case basis, and if you can, kind of work with your DM a little bit. Ideally, they shouldn't just be screwing you over, but if you can see and through gameplay over time which enchantments you're using frequently, consider getting those made a permanent part of your regular gear, and then using Divine Favor or Sacred Weapon or any of your other bonuses for things that just happen to come up from time to time. So overall, this is ideally what you're going to be doing. You're going to be wading into the thick of melee, fighting it out, and the fact that you get down to low hit points, to even down into the negatives, that only makes you more dangerous. So, as long as your turn is next, if you get dropped down to -2, -3, 4, 5, 6, you can take a full attack action, beat the ever-loving crap out of whoever's in front of you, and then use your fervor ability to swift cast some sort of healing spell to boost yourself back up a little bit and give yourself that little bit of room there to keep alive, especially again if you have access to the healing spell, or heal spell rather. That will keep you very much alive and in the fight. Also remember, spells like Chains of Light are going to be useful for locking enemies in place, particularly those that have access to some form of transportation magic, whether it's a spell-like ability, supernatural ability, or spell casting that they use. This will help block teleportation, blink, spells of that nature, and keep them in place, which will be useful for you because you're not a very mobile character, especially in full plate armor. Now, if you get Celestial full plate, then you're going to be negating a lot of your movement penalties. But remember, you also have access to buffing spells that will help with your movement as well. So you can use all of these different things in combination and have a great deal of tactical flexibility on the tabletop, even though you're very much a melee-focused character with this build. So very, very useful all the way around. It's definitely an interesting class and seems like a lot of fun to play. I've had fun researching this one. But, gosh, it feels like there's something else I wanted to talk about here. something kind of important. It's actually a realization that hit me pretty quickly when I was reading through some different forums online, particularly when I got onto Reddit. Some people suggested that, weapons like knives benefit most from effects like Sacred Weapon, because knives deal 1d4 points of damage. Sacred Weapon early on will boost up to 1d6, so that's a massive gain. Our Lucerne Hammer deals 1d12, and up to level 10, level 10 is when you finally start dealing damage equivalent to a longsword with Sacred Weapon. So, you're not going to get much benefit out of it until after that, but if you're using a smaller weapon like a knife, well, your benefit is immediate right there. You're dealing 1d6 points of damage, plus whatever your strength modifier is. That's pretty handy. But why am I talking about this? Well, I realize there's a specific build that's possible with this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Castlevania games or the Castlevania anime on Netflix, but you can take a whip. You can take a whip as a Warpriest and have Sacred Weapon boost its damage. And by level 10, you're doing damage equivalent to a longsword, and you're getting magical bonuses that you can apply to a weapon's situational bonuses as well, on top of regular enchantments. I think you might see where I'm going with this. If you switch over this build to focusing more on your dexterity and getting enchantments or whatever feats you can get your hands on that allow you to apply your dexterity bonus to your damage instead of your strength, and you're using a whip, and then you go down, say, using your bonus feats that allow you to count as a fighter, go down with the 2-weapon fighting feat, and you end up with 2 magic whips. Well, goddamn, I think you could make a Belmont. You could absolutely make a Belmont, especially if you pick human and get that extra feat to help out with the 2-weapon fighting feat chain. I mean, that's a massive benefit right there. You still want to have at least a 13 strength to gain access to feats like power attack and cleave and all of these other wonderful combat options. But with the spell casting added in on top of this works really well. In Knowledge Religion, you could really easily flex that into being, especially since it affects your knowledge of the undead, which, hello, vampires, mummies, the Grim Reaper, all of these awesome things that now suddenly you're a Belmont vampire hunter, a monster slayer of legend. It's absolutely incredible. The possibilities are great, especially with all the different kinds of magic gear that you can equip and throw in to help accentuate the image. And although I'm advocating very much so a heavy armor build, you can easily skip down to medium armor, or because you're proficient in heavy armor, if you do get mithril armor that will count as medium for you, and you have the proficiency with it so that you can wear it properly, I mean, all the way around, you can really build this iconic family name as a vampire hunter. So, go forth and play with that idea. I haven't put much of it together here because, well, unfortunately, lack of time, and we're going to move on to other things. But what do you think? Go on down into the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Do you like these strategies, the overall build, and the final suggestion of making a Belmont, a whip-slinging, vampire-killing monster hunter? Go on down, let me know your thoughts, and let's go ahead and engage in discussion, whether you liked or disliked the video. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and join the alumni here at the Gamers Den. Or if you've already done so, then hit like, and share the video and help us grow ever more. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you folks have yourselves a good night.